The wind howled outside Lily's kitchen window, rattling the panes with an unrelenting fury. She gingerly placed a steaming mug of hot chocolate on the windowsill and peered through the frosty glass. Snowflakes, large and feathery, drifted down in the glow of the street lamp, their slow motion descent belying the force of the storm. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warm aroma of chocolate and the distant memory of holiday carols calm her nerves. Each swirl of snow in the air reminded her of bygone winters when she would stomp through fresh drifts with her best friend Jackson at her side. They'd been nearly inseparable as children, but life had led them on divergent paths. Now, the storm outside felt like a metaphor for her recent loneliness, a swirling chaos that both isolated and blanketed the world in a strange hush. Lily felt safe here, in her family's old Victorian home, but also oddly untethered. Her parents had left to spend the holidays with relatives in a milder climate down south, leaving her alone to watch over the house and manage the unexpected snowstorm that had blown in days earlier than the weather reports had predicted. She had anticipated a solitary week curled up on the couch, reading novels and indulging in nostalgic reveries. Instead, the storm turned her hometown into a world of white streets, impassable, shops shuttered, neighbors hunkered down. She thought of old friends scattered all over the country, none of them truly within walking distance. Except perhaps one. She hadn't spoken to Jackson in what felt like ages, but every now and then he came to mind, usually on days when a memory of laughter or playful mischief beckoned her back to simpler times. As she sipped her hot chocolate, the wind outside momentarily settled, revealing a faint rumble in the distance. It wasn't thunder. Rather, it was the low growl of an engine laboring against the drifts. Curious, Lily squinted out the window until she finally spotted a figure walking in the knee-deep snow, shoulders hunched against the cold, guiding a stalled vehicle toward the curb. Concerned, she rushed to the front door, quickly pulling on her boots and parka. She braced herself, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the swirling snow, the chill nipping at her cheek. "Need help?" She had to raise her voice over the wind. The figure turned around, face partially obscured by a hood and a thick scarf. Another moment passed as they tried to maneuver the stranded car into a more stable spot on the side of the road. Lily half waddled, half ran to assist, pushing against the rear of the car. Their combined effort got the vehicle as far onto the curb as possible without blocking the road. When she finally stepped back, breathing heavily, Lily looked up to speak, only to meet a pair of eyes she could never forget. "Jackson?" She felt a flutter in her chest, a whirl of emotion that mingled surprise, excitement, and a pang of sadness. His dark eyes widened when recognition dawned. "Lily?" Even muffled through his scarf and layered clothing, the relief and astonishment in his voice were clear. He immediately pulled down his scarf, and though the frigid air stung his skin, he smiled. That same crooked, genuine smile she remembered from youth. Without hesitation, they threw their arms around each other in a gleeful embrace, ignoring the snow that continued to drift onto their shoulders and hats. After a few moments, they broke apart, breathless not only from the exertion of pushing the car, but from the tidal wave of memories that crashed over them. It was the strangest and most comforting reunion Lily could have imagined. She ushered him inside, where the warmth of her rickety old radiator greeted them like an old friend. Lily hurried to the kitchen, leaving Jackson by the hallway to shake off the snow from his coat. When she returned, 2 mugs of hot chocolate sat in her hands. He thanked her, wrapping his fingers around the mug with gratitude. For a moment, they sipped in silence, uncertain how to span the gap of all those intervening years. Lily set her mug on the coffee table. "So, wow, it's been a while. Are you living back in town?" She curled her legs beneath her on the sofa, automatically assuming an old posture she used when she and Jackson would talk for hours as teenagers. He nodded. "Sort of. I came back a few months ago. My job is remote now, and my folks needed some help around their place, so I figured, why not?" He glanced around her living room with a wistful smile. "I haven't been in this house since we were kids. Feels so familiar, yet different." "It's the same old place, down to the creaky floorboards," Lily responded, catching his eyes with a grin. "And your parents? I haven't seen them in forever. How are they? Jackson took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage for small talk. They're all right. Older, but still the same. Dad's complaining about his knees all the time, and Mom insists on reorganizing every closet in the house every other week. I came here tonight because I was picking up some groceries for them. I thought I had enough gas, but I guess the cold messed with my engine. Or maybe it was just me being careless. He shrugged apologetically. All that matters is you're safe, Lily said. But the storm's still pretty bad. You want to dry off, maybe wait it out? I have a guest room upstairs. Jackson was about to respond when a flash of lightning lit up the window, followed by a low, distant rumble. Thunder snow. It was a rare phenomenon, but Lily had witnessed it before during intense winter storms. The lights in the house flickered briefly, and both of them stiffened, anticipating a power outage. For a moment, everything held, and the electricity steadied. Thanks, Jackson finally said, his tone softer. I'd really appreciate that. Even with chains on the tires, I'm not sure it's safe to drive. He followed her upstairs, bags and coat in tow, into the guest room. Lily rummaged for extra blankets in the hall closet near the banister. As she handed them over, their eyes met, and an unspoken acknowledgement passed between them, an understanding that, despite the passing of years and the silences in between, their bond remained, waiting like embers for the right spark. Later that night, after Lily had retreated to her bedroom, she found sleep slipping away. Every so often, she noticed the faint creak of floorboards down the hallway, as though Jackson was pacing. She sat up, massaging her temples. Memories cascaded through her mind, the two of them building snow forts as children, sneaking out late at night to stargaze on her roof. The tearful farewell when Jackson's family moved across town to a bigger house, and how that precipitated their slow drift apart during high school. She had never understood why they'd grown so distant. All she knew was that the Jackson who used to finish her sentences had vanished, a breezy text every few months being their only connection, if at all. Feeling restless, Lily decided to go downstairs. Maybe a glass of water or another mug of cocoa would calm her. To her surprise, she saw the faint light of the living room lamp illuminating Jackson's silhouette. He was seated on the couch, staring at an old photo album spread across his lap. She recognized it as the family album that usually sat on the side table. Part of her was tempted to turn back and give him space, but curiosity pulled her forward. Couldn't sleep either? She asked as she stepped into the room. He looked up, an apologetic smile crossing his face. I didn't mean to pry, he said, but I saw this album and just remembered. It's okay, Lily murmured, settling next to him on the couch. I do the same thing when I can't sleep. They turned page after page, pictures from Lily's childhood birthdays, her parents' anniversary celebrations, and within several pages, photos that included Jackson and his family. They paused at one where Lily and Jackson, probably around 10 years old, held hands triumphantly atop a snowman they had built in this very yard. They marveled at the bright expressions on their faces, two kids entirely certain that their friendship was an unbreakable bond. That was the winter my dad taught us both how to ice skate, Lily said through a wistful smile. We fell about 1,000 times. You ended up with a bruised knee for a week. Jackson chuckled. And you insisted on skating circles around me once you got the hang of it. I had to beg you to slow down. They shared a companionable silence, flipping to another page that showcased a summer snapshot. Lily extinguishing birthday candles while Jackson stood behind her, mock fanning the smoke with a paper plate. But the expressions gradually shifted in subsequent photos. Another page showed them each at 12, smiling, but a certain guardedness seemed to creep into their eyes. It was near the time Jackson's father got a new job and his family moved. Although they stayed in the same town, the shift in neighborhood boundaries meant they attended different schools, found different friends, and gradually formed separate lives. Lily, Jackson said suddenly, his gaze fixed on a photo where he wore a forced smile. I wanted to reach out so many times, but once we lost that daily connection, it felt weird, you know? Like, I didn't know what to say. Her lips pressed together in a sad sort of understanding. I felt the same, she conceded. I'd look at my phone sometimes thinking, Maybe I'll text him about something funny that happened, but we started running in different circles. I worried you wouldn't care about the little things that used to tie us together. Jackson inhaled deeply. I always cared. I just didn't know how to show it anymore. And then college, traveling for work. I thought about you often, but telling you that out of the blue just seemed strange. Lily reached out, placing a hand on his arm. It's not strange, I felt that same tug. I'm just sorry we let it go on for so long. He gently covered her hand with his. We have now, though. This is a start. The next morning, Lily awoke to a mesmerizing stillness. The snowstorm had deposited enough powder to bury most cars, and the skies had cleared to a crisp, bright blue. Sunlight refracted off the drifts, casting a glare so intense that Lily had to squint as she peeked through the kitchen curtains. She found Jackson there ahead of her, rummaging in the fridge. Morning, she said softly, stifling a yawn. He turned around, holding up a carton of eggs. Figured I'd whip up some breakfast. Is that okay? She smiled, touched by the simple gesture. Absolutely. Side by side, they moved around the kitchen, finishing each other's tasks. Lily set the table while Jackson scrambled eggs. She toasted bread as he fried up some leftover bacon. The warmth of the stove, combined with the bright winter sunlight, brought a cheerful coziness to the kitchen that made both of them forget the many feet of snow they would have to deal with eventually. Over breakfast, they passed the time with small talk, favorite Netflix shows, the best local pizza joints. Eventually, Jackson offered to help shovel the driveway. If I can clear a path, maybe I can move my car better or at least make it safe to leave when the roads are plowed, Lily chuckled. If you manage to even find your car under all that snow, I'll be impressed. By mid-afternoon, the two of them were outside, each with a shovel, carving channels in the towering drifts that surrounded Lily's house. Despite wearing layers of sweaters under their coats, the labor soon had them both sweating. They took frequent breaks, leaning on their shovels, panting clouds of breath into the frigid air. It wasn't long before Lily started to feel a strain in her lower back, a dull ache that worsened each time she bent to scoop more snow. She paused, her breath catching in her throat as she tried to stretch. Let me do the bulk of it, Jackson insisted, noticing her discomfort. Take it easy, Lily. I'm fine, she protested. I'm just a bit out of shape, that's all. He fixed her with a gentle but firm look. No sense in hurting yourself, especially when I can handle more of the heavy lifting. With a wry grin, she set down her shovel. Fine, boss. I'll go fetch some water or something. Moments later, she returned from the house with 2 steaming travel mugs of tea, only to find Jackson fighting against a particularly dense, icy patch that was blocking the walkway. With each thrust of the shovel, he chipped away at it until he finally broke through. When he turned and saw Lily holding the mugs, he flashed a triumphant grin. Victory, he declared, nodding at the newly cleared path. I forgot how hard this can be. They stood together, sipping tea, content in the simple camaraderie and the faint crackle of ice beneath their boots. Upon finishing the drinks, they resumed shoveling together, but Jackson insisted on tackling most of the heavier accumulations. Lily busied herself brushing off the car, occasionally pausing to admire the crystalline icicles that dangled from the house's eaves like ornate chandeliers. They worked until the low winter sun began to cast elongated shadows across the yard. Later that evening, the wind picked up again, and a new layer of clouds rolled in like a darkening curtain. Forecasts predicted more overnight snow. Inside the house, Lily's living room was illuminated by the soft glow of lamps and the flicker of a fire Jackson had helped her build in the old stone fireplace. They sat across from each other on the floor, leaning against opposite couches, a low, roaring flame dancing between them. I can't believe we've another storm coming, Lily murmured, cradling her 3rd mug of cocoa in 48 hours. I hope it's not too bad. Storm or not, Jackson replied, I guess this means I'll stick around another day. My parents will probably worry, but I can't drive home in this. Lily's eyes softened at the thought that their time together had been extended, even by circumstance. Why not invite them over? She suggested, only half joking. We have plenty of space, Jackson chuckled. Believe me, my folks prefer their house in times like these. My mom still thinks she can do everything. She'll likely want the yard shoveled, the steps salted, all that. She's stubborn. Must run in the family, Lily teased. He offered a mock glare, then joined her in laughter. The ascent of their good humor felt natural, like a warm breeze stirring stale air in a closed room. I'm sorry, Lily added, more seriously. I didn't mean to tease you. No, you're right, he admitted. I am stubborn, always have been. Part of me regrets not pushing harder for us to stay in touch after we parted ways. But I guess in my mind, I was scared you'd moved on, found better friends, or that you'd think I was stuck in the past. She gazed at the dancing flames for a moment before responding. I never replaced you, if that's what you're asking. I had plenty of acquaintances, sure, but no one knew me the way you did. He nodded, eyes fixed on the fire. That, that means a lot. Amid the crackle of the firewood, the reverberating bond between them felt stronger than it had in years. They shared stories of their respective journeys. Jackson's job, which allowed him to travel extensively before switching to remote work, and Lily's pursuit of a small art business that had, in its own modest way, led her back to her parents' home for the time being. The conversation flowed like a thawing river, each tributary revealing a depth of joys and regrets they had rarely shared with anyone else. At some point, Lily disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a plate piled high with cookies. Homemade, courtesy of my mom, she announced, popping one into her mouth with a conspiratorial grin. They devoured them with childlike glee, scattering crumbs on the rug and laughing about it. Everything felt at once nostalgic and new, and easing into the routines of an enduring friendship that had been paused rather than lost. Night fell heavy, and the promised snow began tapping at the windows again. They decided to retire to their rooms early in case the next morning demanded more shoveling and errands. Yet once Lily returned to her bedroom, sleep eluded her once more. She found her thoughts circling back to repressed uncertainties. Would this connection fade again once the snow melted and they returned to their everyday obligations? Unable to shake the questions, she slid out of bed and padded downstairs. She half expected to find Jackson awake again, and indeed, he was there in the living room, standing by the front window, watching the swirling flakes illuminated by the porch light. Any for your thoughts? She ventured quietly, entering the room. Jackson turned his head, his expression a cocktail of contemplation and longing. Just thinking how strange it is that it's taken a blizzard to reconnect us. She moved closer, arms folded around herself for warmth. Maybe it's not so strange. Sometimes it takes something big to break the inertia. She paused, gathering courage in the hush of the falling snow. Do you wonder what will happen when the roads are clear again? He reached out, gently touching the sleeve of her sweater. Truthfully, I want to see you. Not just in passing, not just occasionally. I want to rebuild what we had, and maybe build something new on top of that. That is, if you're open to it. Her heart fluttered. I want that too. She looked past him at the swirling snow, as if nature itself were blessing their vow before it even began. I'm tired of letting fear or busy schedules get in the way. Jackson's relief was palpable. He stepped closer, and Lily felt the warmth of his body chasing away the chill of the room. They lingered there, side by side, speaking only through unspoken gratitude. Before they parted for the night, Lily felt a comforting sense that their friendship, no, their bond, was on the cusp of something even more profound. Morning arrived in a quiet hush, the world outside layered with yet another thick blanket of snow. It was lighter than the previous day, and the cloud cover had broken enough to reveal glimpses of pale sunshine. Jackson helped Lily check on the furnace and ensure the pipes were okay, small tasks that were usually left to her father. On his suggestion, they also rummaged through the old shed for a couple of sleds. Remember these? Lily asked, wiping dust from a plastic toboggan with a faded cartoon design. We used them on that big hill behind the park. He gave a wide grin, patting the top of the sled. How could I forget? We nearly crashed into the pond once. Energized by the memory and assured that the roads wouldn't be cleared for hours yet, they made the spontaneous decision to walk through town toward that very park, sleds in tow. The air was frigid, but the sunshine on the snow created a brilliant spectacle that made every step feel charged with youthful anticipation. They trudged through knee-deep powder, passing houses shuttered against the cold. Occasionally, a neighbor, an older man with a snowblower, or a woman clearing her front steps would wave, seemingly amused to see two adults lugging sleds through a storm. Lily and Jackson waved back, forging onward, cheeks flushed from the brisk exercise and the delight of their plan. When they finally arrived at the hill, they paused at the top, gazing down at the rolling expanse of white that seemed both welcoming and foreboding. Memories played in Lily's mind, a younger version of her, shrieking with excitement as she flew down the slope with Jackson, the two of them weaving around each other in a competitive dance of speed. They settled the sleds at the crest of the hill. "Ready?" Jackson asked. Beneath his casual tone, Lily could sense the same youthful thrill that had spurred them on years ago. Eager and only a bit apprehensive, she nodded, gripping the rope handle. "On three. 1, 2, 3. They launched themselves down together, wind rushing in their ears, powder spraying up around them, hearts pounding with exhilaration. The slope, though smaller than Lily remembered, provided just enough velocity to make them feel like flying. By the time they slid to a stop at the bottom, both burst into laughter. Pure, unadulterated laughter that seemed to sweep away the years of distance and regret. For a moment they lay side by side in the snow, breath steaming and pulses racing. Lily's hat had slipped down over her eyes, and Jackson's scarf had come loose, exposing his reddened cheeks to the cold air. He pushed himself onto an elbow, gazing at her. She reached out, brushing snow off his jacket. "That," she said between giggles, "was exactly what I needed." He leaned closer, a playful spark in his eyes that gave way to something deeper. "Me too," he murmured, and for an instant, time froze. They were no longer the separated old friends, but two kindred spirits, rediscovering the threads that had held them together all along. They spent a good hour on the hill, sliding, laughing, and reverting to the carefree children they once were. Each spirited ride chipped away at the doubts and insecurities that had accumulated over the years. Upon deciding it was time to head back to Lily's house for lunch, they readied themselves for another trudge through the snow. On the way back, they spotted a neighbor whose car was stuck in a deep drift by the roadside. Without hesitation, Jackson set his sled aside and hurried over to help, Lily right behind him. Together, they pushed, dug with their gloves, and maneuvered the vehicle until it gained enough traction to drive on. The grateful neighbor tried to offer them money, which they politely declined, insisting that neighbors helping neighbors was simply the right thing to do. As Lily turned away, shaking the snow off her gloves, she couldn't help but feel an extra wellspring of admiration for Jackson. His willingness to step up mirrored the same trait she'd loved about him as a kid. He always made sure those around him were okay. When they finally returned home, the short winter day was already edging toward dusk. They peeled off their layers of snow-crusted clothing in the foyer, laughing as Lily realized she was missing one glove, and Jackson's sock was almost entirely soaked through. The house was a haven of warmth again, the furnace humming in the background, the smell of soup Lily had left simmering on the stove enveloping them. They fell into an easy routine, Jackson ladling the soup into bowls while Lily retrieved fresh bread and set the table. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. As they shared the meal, steam curling around their faces, they spoke of simpler times in the same breath as they planned for the future. Lily shared her desire to showcase her artwork at a local gallery and create an online store. Jackson spoke of an idea he had for starting a community outreach program for teens who needed mentorship, especially in technical fields. Before the moment could slip away, Lily reached out, placing her hand atop his on the table. "We can make time for each other now," she said, her voice earnest. No more excuses. He turned his hand to hold hers. "Absolutely. I'll be around as long as you'll have me." His eyes shone with sincerity, and she felt the last remaining fractures in their friendship heal. The conversation shifted to lighthearted plans, meeting each other's coworkers, neighbors, favorite coffee shops, and forging new inside jokes. They joked about combined family get-togethers for future holidays, their laughter carrying a sincerity that hinted they were no longer just talking in hypotheticals. For the rest of that week, the snowstorms waxed and waned, but Lily and Jackson faced them side by side. They shoveled driveways for elderly neighbors, made grocery runs for those trapped by the drifts, and even spent one entire afternoon baking cookies to deliver around the block. With each small act of kindness, they built a renewed friendship that felt stronger for having been lost and found again. Soon, the roads were once again passable. Plows had come through, routine life resumed. On the day Jackson was finally able to drive home, he and Lily stood on her front porch, the midday sun reflecting off pockets of untouched snow. They embraced warmly, far less awkward than that first reconnection in the storm. There was no question in either of their minds that this was goodbye for only a short while. "I have to check in on my parents," Jackson said, rubbing his gloved hands together. "Make sure everything's all right over there. But how about dinner tomorrow?" Lily laughed softly, her breath visible in the cold air. "Dinner tomorrow sounds perfect. I'll even cook something that's not soup or canned beans. You bring dessert." He smirked. "Deal?" With one last squeeze of her hand, he climbed into his car, finally dislodged, and shoveled out and started the engine. She waved from the porch until his taillights disappeared down the street. As Lily stepped back into her house, she felt it brimming with a new kind of warmth, an energy that had long been absent. The walls that once felt too quiet now resonated with recent echoes of laughter, conversation, and plans for the future. She thought of how extraordinary it was that a fierce storm, with all its inconvenience and isolation, had sparked a reunion she never expected, yet had secretly yearned for. The memory of Jackson's reassuring smile stayed with her as she closed the door, heart light with anticipation for the next day and all the days that would follow. Though the snow outside still stood in tall drifts, the barriers in her heart had melted. Their friendship, once on a precarious ledge, was now rekindled, and neither of them would let the chance at a renewed connection slip away this time. If a snowy tempest was what it took to bring them back together, then perhaps the storms of life could serve another purpose, reminding them to hold on to the people who mattered most and to never underestimate the power of an unexpected act of care.